Alex moves to a quiet American suburb, looking for a new beginning. But a meeting with his neighbor, a cop named Zach, opens the door to a story where hidden feelings, fear of being themselves, and social condemnation intertwine with an unexpected closeness. Can they stand up to the expectations of others and their own fears? The lake was quiet that evening, windless. Trees stood still like they were listening. I told myself I was here to disappear, to leave the past behind in a city that chewed me up and spat me out. The house I found wasn't much, but it was mine for now. A few boards creaked, the roof needed fixing, but it faced the water. That was enough. Next door, the other house looked cleaner. Straighter porch, fixed railings, and a patrol car in the gravel driveway. I noticed it the moment I pulled in. It stayed parked there most days, sometimes gone in the early mornings. Sheriff, county badge, and him. I didn't plan on noticing the man who lived there, but the town was small, and the silence had its own way of making people loud in your head. The first time I saw him up close was on my second day. I was rinsing coffee out of a thermos on the porch when I heard a bark, short, sharp, commanding. I looked up. German Shepherd, ears alert, eyes bright. And beside her, a man whose presence could have filled the entire yard without a word. He didn't smile, didn't wave. Just nodded, once like he was acknowledging a presence he didn't expect. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. A pattern formed. I'd go out at dawn, line my tackle box, make a show of casting into still water. He'd walk the dog at exactly 6:35 a.m. every morning, looping past my fence. Each time, we locked eyes for half a second longer than the time before. Fishing, he asked one morning, breaking the rhythm. Trying to, I said, no luck out here unless you go deep. He didn't stop walking, just threw the words over his shoulder and moved on. The dog, Nova, I later heard him call her, looked back at me like she knew what this was. Like she'd seen it before. It didn't help that I caught no fish. But I kept coming back. Not for the lake. For the sound of his boots on gravel. For that moment, just before he turned the corner, when I knew he'd be there. We hadn't said 5 full sentences to each other by the end of the first week. But the tension was there, the kind you feel in your spine, not your chest. I wasn't new to it. I'd learned how to read silence a long time ago. The first real spark came from something stupid. A snapped branch. I was hauling firewood from a pile out back when I tripped over a root, landed hard on one knee, and let out a string of curses that probably echoed across the lake. I didn't expect anyone to hear. But then I heard, "You all right?" from behind me. I turned. He was at the edge of my yard, hands in his jacket pockets, expression unreadable. "Just fine," I said, standing quick and brushing dirt from my jeans. Looked worse than fine. Nova patted beside him, sniffing the air. She wandered over without hesitation, pressed her nose to my knee. No bark this time. "She likes you," he said. "Good taste," I replied, and regretted it the second it came out. But he didn't laugh. Didn't react at all, except for one thing. His eyes lingered just long enough to let me know he'd caught the tone. "I'm Zach," he said after a pause. "Alex." He gave a half nod, then turned back toward his place. No goodbye, no small talk. I stood there, blood rushing to my ears for reasons that had nothing to do with the fall. That night, I sat out by the dock. The air smelled of pine and cold. I watched his porch light flick on, then off. A shadow passed across the living room window. Nothing more. But I stayed there long after my coffee turned cold. We didn't talk again for 3 days. But something had shifted. When I went to town for groceries, I saw his patrol car parked near the station. When I came out of the store, he was standing across the street with 2 other deputies. He saw me. I know he did, but he didn't look over. Later that night, there was a knock at my door. Not loud, almost hesitant. I opened it to find Nova. And behind her, Zach, holding a flashlight. Transformer blue. "Power's out until morning," he said. "You got heat?" "Wood stove." "I'm good." He hesitated, and I noticed he wasn't in uniform. Just jeans and a flannel. Casual, unarmored. "All right, just checking." He started to turn, then added, "You ever need anything?" "I'm next door." "Yeah," I said. "I know." He looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw it. That flicker. The one people spend their lives trying to hide. But it was there, and for a second, neither of us flinched. He left without another word. The next morning, I woke up too early. My thoughts were noise, and the house was too quiet. I grabbed my thermos and walked out into the cold, down to the dock. He was already there, crouched near the water's edge, tossing a stick for Nova. She likes mornings, he said. Don't we all? He stood and wiped his hands on his pants. I could see the tension in his shoulders. It wasn't about the weather. Listen, he started, then stopped. Nova barked, and the sound felt like a cover. I'm not much for talking, he said finally. Good, I said. Neither am I. But the way we stood there, close enough to hear breath, far enough not to admit why, it said everything. The following week passed in fragments. Coffee steam rising. Nova chasing birds near the shore. Zach standing on his porch, watching the treetops like they held answers. I learned his habits. What time he left for shifts, how often he cleaned his truck, which days he didn't come home until late. One evening, I saw him sitting on the steps, guitar in his hands. Just soft strumming. No singing. The music carried across the lawn like something secret. Like something you weren't supposed to hear, but couldn't turn away from. I stayed by my window for over an hour. Then it happened. Late afternoon. Overcast sky. I was cutting rope by the shed when I heard yelling. Not anger, panic. Nova. I dropped the knife and ran. Zach was in the street, leash in hand, eyes wild. She bolted. The gate was open. Which way? I don't know. We split. I ran toward the old logging trail. 5 minutes in, I heard leaves rustle. She was there, muddy, tail wagging, tongue out like she was proud of the chaos. I crouched. Hey girl, you got someone worried? She bounded toward me and nearly knocked me over. Well, I got back. Zach was pacing. The moment he saw her, something in his face crumbled. He dropped to his knees, pulled her in close, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he looked at me. Not like before. I owe you. You don't. Silence. Then, you keep showing up. So do you. Something shifted in that space between us. He stood. Wipe his hands. You want to come by later? I've got beer. And less chaos. Sure, I said. And I meant it. I came back from fishing with nothing but wet boots and a sore arm. Nova was waiting by my porch. She barked once, just loud enough to pull me out of my thoughts. I turned and saw Zach standing by the fence, one hand in his pocket, the other holding her leash. He looked like he'd been standing there for a while. She ran off again, he said, but his voice didn't carry blame. I gave her a few scratches and handed him the leash. Our fingers brushed, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he nodded and walked away without looking back. That night, I couldn't sleep. My room was quiet, but my head wasn't. I kept thinking about the way he avoided eye contact, how he hadn't stopped by in days, and how the porch light on his house hadn't been on for 2 nights in a row. Something had shifted. The easy rhythm we'd stumbled into, quiet mornings, small exchanges, the shared silence, had started to slip. I saw him in town the next afternoon. I was walking out of the grocery store. He was across the street, leaning against his patrol car. He wasn't in uniform. He wasn't alone either. A woman stood beside him, talking fast with a smile on her face. Her hand touched his arm. I waited for his to respond. It didn't. But when he saw me watching, he looked away fast, like I'd caught him doing something he wasn't supposed to. I walked to my truck without saying anything. The next morning, Nova came to me again, alone. She sat by the dock and waited until I opened the screen door. She didn't bark, didn't move, just waited. I walked her back across the yard and knocked on Zach's door. He answered quickly, like he'd been standing right behind it. She likes it here, I said. He nodded once. She doesn't listen to me lately. I didn't know if he meant the dog. He reached out to take the leash, and this time, I didn't pull away when our hands touched. I held his gaze longer than I had any right to, but he didn't move. Didn't pull away either. That night, I found a flyer under my porch mat. I almost threw it away, thought it was junk, but the colors caught my eye. It was an ad for a bar in Portland, one of those places with drag nights and themed shows. At the bottom, someone had written a name in marker. Not mine, not random. Zach. I stared at it until the ink blurred. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I folded it once and left it in the back of a drawer I rarely opened. The next few days, things felt different. He stopped showing up at the usual time. Nova didn't come by. His porch light stayed off. I told myself it didn't matter. I lied. Then came the storm. It hit fast. Wind howled through the trees. Rain slammed against the windows, and the lake turned into a mirror of chaos. I lit candles and boiled water just in case the power dropped. By midnight, the sky had gone black and the air smelled like electricity. A knock came at the door. Not loud, not rushed, just enough to be heard over the wind. It was him, soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead, breath fogging in the cold. He didn't wait for an invitation. "Chimney's pulling smoke the wrong way," he said. "You okay?" I stepped aside. He walked in without a word, moved straight to the stove, adjusted the flue, checked the vents. When he was done, he sat down at the kitchen table, dripping on the floor, but not caring. I handed him a towel. He didn't use it. After a while, he spoke. I thought I could keep things separate. I didn't answer. "I've been doing it for years," he continued. "Keep my job over here, my life over there. No overlap." "Doesn't work like that," I said. "I know," he replied. The wind screamed through the trees. Inside, it was still. "I saw you in town," I said finally. "I figured." She looked happy. "She doesn't know me." He looked up then. His face was tight, but something in it cracked. "I'm tired, Alex." "Of what?" "Of hiding. Of guessing who's watching. Of waiting for someone to find out and end everything." I leaned against the counter. "You think it ends when they find out, doesn't it?" "No, it ends when you give up." He let that sit. Then, in a voice so low it barely existed, "I don't want to give up." I crossed the room slowly. My hand found his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't flinch. "You don't have to," I said. We stood there, nothing between us but air and all the things we hadn't said for weeks. He looked up, and his eyes searched mine like he was trying to find something he'd lost a long time ago. The storm outside began to quiet, but inside, it still raged. He left before morning. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked out, boots heavy on the steps, Nova trailing behind. The next day, there were rumors. Someone at the diner said he'd been seen leaving my place late at night. Someone else said he looked different lately, quieter, distracted. It didn't take long for people to start assuming. That afternoon, I passed him on the road. He was driving. Didn't look at me. Didn't wave. The light changed. He kept going. Nova didn't bark. That night, I found her by my porch again, waiting, just like me. Zach stopped coming around after the storm. No more morning walks. No Nova on the porch. No stolen glances from across the yard. For 2 days, I told myself he needed space. But on the third day, when I saw him driving past my house and refusing to even glance in my direction, something snapped. I waited, giving him the benefit of doubt. Then I waited more, knowing deep down he wasn't coming. The quiet between us wasn't just quiet anymore. It was deliberate, chosen, and I didn't know why. When Nova showed up alone again, I fed her. She stayed by my side for hours, resting her head on my foot like nothing had changed. But everything had. Zach didn't come to get her that night. I slept with her curled at the edge of the room, her breathing steady in the dark. The next morning, I brought her back. He didn't answer the door. I knocked again. Still nothing. I heard movement inside, but he never opened it. I stood there until I was sure he was avoiding me on purpose, then turned and walked away without looking back. Something inside me tightened, a pressure I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't heartbreak. It was the realization that I'd trusted someone who was only ever halfway in, and now he was all the way gone. I tried to ignore it, focused on the lake, on small repairs, on catching fish I didn't care about. But I kept seeing him in the corner of my eye, his truck in the driveway, his porch light flickering on and off, Nova barking faintly behind the fence. Everything stayed the same, except us. One evening, just before dark, I saw him leaving his house in uniform. He was dressed clean, every piece of him sharp and untouchable. I stood at the edge of my property, just out of sight, and watched him drive off. He looked like someone who had it all figured out. But I knew better. I'd seen him at his weakest. I'd heard the way his voice cracked when he said he was tired of hiding. And now he was pretending none of it had ever happened. That night I got a text. Not from him. From someone I didn't know. The message was short. "You should be careful who you trust." I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it. The next morning, someone had spray painted a word on my mailbox. One word. Big. Red. Obvious. A slur. I washed it off before the sun was fully up. I didn't call the police. What would have been the point? Zach didn't come by. Not to check. Not to ask. Not even when he must have seen it on his way out. He was choosing the safe road, the quiet one, the one that didn't involve me. I try to be okay with that. I try not to care. But I did. 2 nights later, I heard music through the trees. Not loud. Soft. A guitar. Him. I walked outside and stood by the fence, listening. I thought maybe it was a peace offering. Maybe he missed me too. The music stopped. His porch light flicked off. I waited another minute, then turned away. The following week passed like a weight pressing on my chest. I avoided the places he might be. Skipped the store. Fished at night. Told Nova to stay back when she came running. But none of it worked. I still felt him everywhere. Then, one afternoon, I saw him at the diner. I come in to grab coffee. He was already sitting in the corner with 2 deputies, laughing, leaning back in his chair, pretending. He looked at me once, just for a second. No smile, no guilt, just blank recognition. Then he looked away. That hurt more than anything else. I left without ordering. Back home, I found Nova waiting again, sitting in front of my door like nothing had changed. I knelt down beside her, rubbed behind her ears, and whispered words that weren't meant for her. He doesn't get to do this. The next day, I knocked on his door. This time, he answered. He looked tired, thinner, his jaw set like he was bracing for something. What do you want? He asked. I want to know why you disappeared. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. I didn't disappear. Then say something. He stared at me. This wasn't supposed to happen. You said that before. What changed? He ran a hand over his face. People are watching. There are things you don't understand. Then explain it to me. I can't. Won't, I corrected. He didn't deny it. I have a job, he said. A badge. A reputation. You think I can throw that away? No. I think you already did. The moment you sat on my porch and said you were tired of lying. His eyes narrowed. You think this is easy? No, I said. I think it's hard. And I think you gave up. That stung. I saw it in his expression. The crack in his armor. He looked away. You need to stop showing up. Then tell me you feel nothing. Say it to my face. He looked at me for a long time. His mouth opened, then closed. You can't, I said, because it meant something. He stepped back. This was a mistake. No, this was real. And you're scared. He didn't answer. Just walked back inside and closed the door. I stood there for a long time before leaving. 3 days later, someone left a flyer on my windshield. Same bar, same handwriting. But this time there was no name. Just an underlined phrase. See you there. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a joke. It felt like a dare. I didn't go, but I waited by the window that night just in case. No one came. The days got colder. Nova stopped visiting. His truck stayed gone longer. I didn't ask around. I didn't need to. I already knew. He was gone. But not really, because everywhere I went, I heard his voice. In the wind through the trees. In the click of boots on gravel. In the silence that came too fast and stayed too long. I wanted to forget. I tried. But forgetting someone who never let you in is harder than letting go of someone who did. Then one night, I heard tires on gravel. Late. Past midnight. I stood by the door, but didn't open it. I heard footsteps. Then nothing. When I opened the door, a guitar case sat on the porch. No note. Just silence. I stood there for a long time, holding something that wasn't mine, wondering if he'd ever come back to claim it, or if he'd left it behind as a final apology. Nova never came again, but I left the case by the window, just in case he changed his mind, just in case he was ready to come back and choose something other than fear. But he never did, and maybe that's all I needed to know. The guitar case sat by the window for 5 days. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. It stayed there, collecting dust and meaning. Every time I passed by, I caught myself glancing at it like it might open on its own, like it still carried something unfinished. I had no idea whether he'd left it as a goodbye or a question, but I wasn't the one with answers. I was just the one left behind. The town stayed quiet. Cold crept in. I saw him once, driving through Main Street, sunglasses on, windows up, like even the air was something he didn't want to share. He didn't stop, didn't look, and I didn't wave. I kept walking like I hadn't felt anything at all, but my fists were clenched the whole way home. That night, I left the porch light on. I told myself it was for Nova. I told myself I was over it, but I kept checking the front step like something would appear. Nothing did. The following evening, I was walking the edge of the lake when I heard someone behind me. I turned, expecting wind. It was him. No warning. No call. Just Zach, standing a few feet away, like he hadn't disappeared. His jaw was tight, hands in his jacket, eyes unreadable. You left this, I said, not moving. Guitar. Window. I know, he said. Silence stretched. The wind moved. My breath clouded. You planning on explaining? I asked. He shifted. No. I nodded once. Then don't. I turned to leave. I'm scared, he said, fast, sharp, as if the words burned on the way out. I stopped. Of what? Me? He looked away. Of all of it. That's not good enough. I know. I turned back. You don't get to vanish for weeks and show up with one word. I never meant to hurt you. Then why did you? He didn't answer. I took a step closer. You knew what this was. You knew what I felt. You knew it wasn't nothing. I still know, he said, voice low. Then what are you running from? He exhaled hard. My job. My name. My mother. The guys I work with. The people in this town. You think they'd look at me the same? They already don't, I said. And it has nothing to do with me. He flinched. You think hiding's protecting you? I asked. It's killing you. I can't lose everything. You already did. You lost me. He looked up, pain cutting through the rest of his composure. I thought I had more time. You didn't. And I'm not waiting. The silence that followed was louder than anything he could have said. For a moment, I thought he might walk away again, that I'd seen the last of him. But then his hand twitched to his side, like he was reaching for something invisible. I lied, he said. I know. I told myself it was easier not to feel anything. Was it? No. He stepped forward. I didn't come here to fight. Then what? To tell the truth. I stared at him. Then say it. His voice cracked. I don't want to do this without you. My chest tightened. He kept going. I think about you every day. Every time I pass the lake. Every time I sit on that porch. Every time Nova barks at your door. She came by, I said. Even when you didn't. She always liked you more. That's not the point. I know. He took a breath. You make me feel like I don't have to pretend. You don't. I don't know how to live like that. You learn. I'm not good at this. Neither am I said. But I showed up. He looked at me like he was trying to memorize every line, every word, like I might vanish if he blinked. I'm sorry, he said. I should have said it before. Say it now. I'm sorry. His voice broke then. Real raw, the kind of break that doesn't come with tears, but with truth. I thought if I stayed away, it would protect us both. It didn't. I know. Then he stepped forward. Slowly. No rush. No panic. Just a man walking toward the hardest thing he'd ever said yes to. I can't promise everything will be easy, he said. I might mess up again. I might get scared again. But I don't want to disappear anymore. I watched him for a long time. Then, quietly, I said, then don't. We stood in the dusk, the air cooling, the lake still behind us. He looked down, then back at me. Do you hate me? No. Do you trust me? Not yet. That's fair. He paused. Can I earn it back? I didn't answer right away, but I didn't say no. He nodded, like he was accepting whatever version of forgiveness that meant. I left the guitar because I couldn't carry it anymore, he said. You could take it back. He shook his head. It's yours now. The next morning, Nova was at my door again. I opened it before she knocked with her paw. She bounded in like nothing had ever been broken. Zach showed up that afternoon. He didn't talk much, just sat on the steps beside me, watching the lake. Eventually, he said, you were right. About what? Pretending doesn't make it easier. No, I said. It just makes it quieter. He leaned back. I'm tired of quiet. We didn't need anything else that day. Just that. The following week, things didn't get easier, but they got more real. He stopped hiding when he came by. He stopped avoiding town. He started talking more, not just small words, but stories. About his dad, his first partner, his first panic attack. The way he'd thought he could bury parts of himself forever if he just worked hard enough. He told me about the night he almost drove past the lake and kept going. He told me he turned around because he thought of my porch light, and I told him I'd left it on for him. He smiled at that. A real one. Nova barked and wagged her tail like she knew what we didn't yet. That something had shifted, and this time, no one ran. Zach didn't show up in uniform for 3 days after the last time we talked. The truck was there. Nova barked like usual, but he stayed inside. I didn't push. Not yet. When he finally came back into town, people noticed. Not because of how he looked, but because of who he walked beside. Me. We stepped into the hardware store together. Just to grab nails and rope, nothing meaningful. But the silence that followed us down the aisles was louder than any greeting. The old man behind the counter said nothing. The woman near the gardening section turned away. The same people who used to wave now gave only glances, long and sharp. Zach felt it. I saw it in his posture. But he didn't flinch. He paid in cash, thanked the clerk, walked out with me like it didn't matter. But I knew it did. And that was the beginning. The whispers started first. The ones loud enough to hear when you weren't supposed to. Then came the cold shoulders, the unanswered calls from the station, the shift in how people greeted him. Not angry, just careful, like he had suddenly become something delicate or dangerous. He lost the Wednesday shift without warning. The deputy covering for him said it was just a schedule change. Zach nodded and didn't argue. But he didn't get it back the next week either. He didn't tell me, but I saw the list on his kitchen table. The one with names and duties and a blank space where his used to be. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. We just stood there, Nova between us, waiting for the next moment to come. It did. 2 weeks later, Zach's mother called. He didn't answer. She called again, left a message. I didn't hear the words, but I saw the aftermath. He stood by the porch for nearly an hour after that call. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Later that night, he said it was the first time she asked him directly. Is it true? He told her yes. And she said nothing. Then hung up. He didn't speak for the rest of the night. The fallout was quiet, but real. No big explosion. No town meeting. Just slow isolation. Invitations stopped. Calls got shorter. He became a presence people avoided. But not everyone. A kid from the department brought over a wrench one day. Said nothing, just left it and nodded. A neighbor across the lake waved from his canoe. And Nova still ran through every yard like it was hers. And me? I stayed. That became the only thing that mattered. We built a new rhythm. Small but steady. He taught me how to fix the outboard motor on the boat. I taught him how to gut a fish without making a mess. We spent long evenings on the dock, not talking about what we'd lost, but about what we still had. Sometimes we argued. Sometimes we sat in silence. But it was real, and neither of us walked away anymore. He told the chief himself. Said he wouldn't hide. Not anymore. The chief didn't yell. Just listened. Then quietly told him things might be harder now. That not everyone would be comfortable. That he should be prepared. Zach said he already was. I watched him change without changing. The same man who once disappeared now stood taller when others tried to look through him. The same one who used to avoid town walked into the diner with me on a Thursday morning like we'd done it for years. Some people still stared, but others nodded. One even said good morning. We kept showing up. One night, he handed me the guitar. Said he hadn't played in a while. Asked if I remembered how he used to sit outside, just playing to the wind. I told him I remembered every note. He smiled, then played again. Not perfectly, not loud, just enough to let the quiet know we weren't afraid of it anymore. A week later, he brought over old pictures from his academy days. He showed me who he used to be, who he thought he had to become, and who he finally realized he didn't need to hide. I wish I could tell that guy it's okay, he said. You just did. I answered. We didn't make speeches. There was no grand moment. But every shared meal, every walk around the lake, every time he answered the door without checking first, it was all a choice. A step away from fear. His world didn't collapse. It just changed. Not everyone stayed. Some friends stopped calling. Some old connections drifted. But the ones who mattered remained. And so did we. By winter, the porch had 2 chairs instead of 1. Nova slept between them. Zach drank coffee without flinching when neighbors walked past. I stopped waiting for someone to question what we were. No one had to. We already knew. Love doesn't fix everything, but it changes what's worth fixing. Zach still gets quiet sometimes. Still has nights where he second guesses everything. But now he says it out loud. Now, I'm there to answer. We never talked about the exact moment it all turned. There wasn't one. Just a slow, stubborn decision to stay. To stop apologizing. To keep choosing each other, even when the world didn't. That's what made it real. People still whisper, but now we laugh about it. The world hasn't become perfect, but it's become ours. And when I sit beside him on the dock and hear Nova's collar jingle as she chases wind, I know one thing with absolute certainty. Fear has no power when the truth finally has a voice.